Get started in 1 minute. If you could all be seated, please. 1 minute until we start.
Where am I? Oh, there's Rob. I know. Why is it so much tighter today? Oh, hey. How are you? I didn't see you yet. I think this is me.
Yes.
We have behind your name. Oh, okay. Someone. Oh, this is not. Oh, yeah, these are mine. What? No, these are not. Yeah, I have like a new one.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us at the Breeders' Cup Health and Safety Briefing. I'm Claire Crosby, the Vice President of Communications for Breeders' Cup Limited. And while we're getting settled in, I'm just going to go over a few rules of engagement for the morning briefing. If everyone could please silence their cell phones, that would be greatly appreciated. All of the briefing remarks and the Q&A session today are on the record. However, the Q&A session will be held at the end of the briefing, so please hold your questions until that time. When you're called upon to ask a question, please state your name and affiliation. We ask that you limit your time to one question and one follow-up. We're happy to answer other questions about the Breeders' Cup separately, but in this forum, please limit your questions to questions related to safety. Now it is my honor to introduce Drew Fleming, President and CEO of Breeders' Cup Limited. Drew?
Thanks, Claire. Good morning or afternoon. It's good to see everybody. Welcome to the annual Breeders' Cup Safety Briefing. I'm honored to share the stage with some of our industry's best and brightest who work to keep our horses and jockeys safe each and every day. From our Chief Racing Officer, Dora Delgado, who leads the charge on best-in-class safety protocols for the Breeders' Cup World Championships, to Dr. Farmer and Dr. Benson, who spend their days at the Breeders' Cup on the backside examining horses and observing timed works, and their nights reviewing veterinary records and the results of diagnostic scans. To the newer additions, Lisa Lazarus, Ben Moser, and Dr. Hester, who are working day in and day out at HISA and HIWU to implement and enforce uniform safety and integrity reforms for the benefit of everyone who love our sport. I want to thank you for everything you do as part of the ecosystem of care that surrounds our magnificent equine athletes. We do this briefing every year because for the Breeders' Cup, safety comes above all. This year has been a tough one for the sport and reminds us why the efforts of everyone on this stage are of paramount importance to the future of racing. Everyone in this room and so many others at Santa Anita Park and racetracks across the country are working hard to address the root causes of equine injuries and improve safety across the board. HISA has ushered in a new era for racing and given us the opportunity to move forward together as a sport despite the challenges we continue to face. Now that we finally have one national regulator and one set of rules across the country, we're able to address safety and integrity holistically, transparently, and with a sense of urgency as we drive tangible progress. We have already seen how these efforts have improved safety across the industry, but we know there's still more to be done. One important and exciting new initiative is a collaboration between HISA and Amazon Web Services and Palantir to revolutionize the way the industry uses data analysis to gain deeper insights into the root causes of equine injury. Big data has revolutionized almost every other industry, and now, thanks to HISA's reporting requirements, we have for the first time a rich set of data and are applying the most advanced machine learning tools to identify potential risk factors before an injury occurs and make decisions about a horse's readiness to run. These insights will revolutionize equine safety and the sport more broadly. I'm going to turn it over to Dora first to walk through this year's protocols and refresh us on industry safety protocols that have been in place for the World Championships for several years now. But before I do so, I'd like to make one more acknowledgement. Thank you to First Racing and Santa Anita Park for hosting the 40th running of the Breeders' Cup World Championships for a record 11th time. Belinda, Craig, Aiden, Dion, and Nate, it's always a pleasure to work with your fantastic team. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Drew, and thanks everyone for coming today. The efforts to make sure all of our equine athletes are in peak physical condition for training and racing is a cohesive, collaborative, and combined effort among their trainers, all our veterinarians, track safety crews, track surface teams, and remains the #1 priority for the Breeders' Cup. Cooperative meetings between Breeders' Cup, First Racing, HISA, HIWU, the California Horse Racing Board, and the Breeders' Cup veterinarian team leads were held frequently, outlining veterinary exam schedules, out-of-competition testing protocols, safety and medication regulations, injury management, and the use of diagnostic tools and the implementation of all protocols necessary to provide the safest racing environment for our athletes. Making sure our horsemen were informed of these new protocols, safety measures, and security requirements, Breeders' Cup communicated frequently through emails, phone call, personal visits, along with a webinar we hosted provided to all potential owners, trainers, and veterinarians, which supplied important information about testing, these medication rules, withdrawals, security check-ins, mandatory jog-ups, and much more. The first step that Breeders' Cup takes towards creating competitive and healthy fields is to compile a list of possible starters, which consists of challenge winners, graded and grouped winners, stakes competitors, and the top talent racing around the globe. This list is continuously added to as horses come off and on due to a variety of reasons, and because it is ever-changing, it requires a great deal of coordination between our out-of-competition testing coordinator, Dr. Will Farmer, and the team at HIWU led by Ben Mosier. They are responsible for testing the horses who we've collaborated on and identified. In just a few minutes, they both will provide additional details on this program. The foundation of great racing relies on its racing surfaces, and of course Santa Anita Park has a tremendously talented group tasked with providing consistent, fair, and safe surfaces every day. Dennis Moore, one of the most respected trackmen in the world, track superintendent Rob Moore, along with Jesse Martinez, the track supervisor, oversee a maintenance team that makes sure that horses can train and race as they make nearly 300,000 trips to the racing surfaces here annually at Santa Anita. They employ the most advanced racetrack technology and research available and work with surface expert Dr. Mick Peterson, the University of Kentucky Racetrack Safety Program Director and head of the Racing Surfaces Testing Laboratory. They gather all the necessary data required for a complete analytical view of their tracks. The next step in the plan was new this year, the creation of a veterinary assessment panel, which reviewed the medical and race records for all possible starters prior to pre-entry, which identified any horses that presented a need for further evaluation, and Dr. Farmer will speak to that process shortly. The next step was to make sure they all arrived here in time for our mandatory security check-in. That meant, in the case of our domestic horses, arranging FedEx charters to get them to the Ontario, California airport from New York and Kentucky. All horses in North America had to arrive no later than 11 a.m. yesterday, October 31st. International shippers were required to arrive no later than 10 p.m. this past Sunday, October 29th, and we again chartered a plane to bring European runners directly into LAX. The Japanese runners arrived several days prior, also through LAX, and upon arrival at the airport, the plane was met by agents of USDA APHIS, and they remained under the supervision of that agency while they served a 42-hour quarantine, while their blood samples were being tested. All internationals were pre-blood tested before they boarded their flight, and their post-arrival samples were cleared by the National Veterinary Services Laboratory in Ames, Iowa. Once their blood samples and temperature checks were completed, they were released from a quarantine status, and they remain in an isolation status until they are shipped back to their country of origin. All horses in an isolation status are approved to train on the racetrack surfaces at scheduled and approved times. The Breeders' Cup Equine Security Watch began at 11 a.m. on Tuesday, October 31st. This is a 24-hour security surveillance performed by the Breeders' Cup equine investigators and equine security officers, which are aided in their endeavors by a high-definition camera system installed in every barn at Santa Anita. They are monitored by this team around the clock. In addition to the trained security professionals, the Breeders' Cup assembles an expert HIWU investigative team, and an experienced investigators of the California Horse Racing Board are also on site. Breeders' Cup veterinarian co-leads, Dr. Will Farmer and Dr. Deborah Lamparter, head the Breeders' Cup veterinary team, which is tasked with coordinating the last round of out-of-competition samples with HIWU, working with the FIRST Safety Team and the CHRB official veterinarians as they perform daily exams, gather jog-up data, and develop extensive and comprehensive injury management protocols that will be deployed if necessary. I'm going to ask Dr. Farmer now to speak to the details of this expansive program and the others mentioned previously.
Thank you, Dora. The veterinary approach for Breeders' Cup has expanded every year. I've been involved with Breeders' Cup since 2010, and every year we continue to add and improve, and this year continues that tradition. And it's a massive collaborative effort with the Stronach veterinarians and Dr. Benson and the CHRB, Dr. Grande and Dr. Blea, as well as the work that Dr. Lamparter and I do in trying to organize the Breeders' Cup side. So this is a very large group of veterinarians that we have here. We have approximately 15 veterinarians from the Breeders' Cup side that pair up with the California Horse Racing Board and Stronach veterinarians to have a very large veterinary presence here at the racetrack every day. Some things I would like to go through, starting as Dora had mentioned, is the new this year where we took all of our probables early on in October and did an in-depth review. And this was a great collaboration with HISA, since now we have a database where all of our medical records are being submitted. So with the help of Dr. Jennifer Dernberger at HISA, we were able to submit our names of our probable list to her, and they were able to pull that information and help accumulate that to make it easy for us to go through and review all of the medical records for these horses. So we could look at veterinary list histories, we could look at work patterns, race patterns, medication treatments, to identify any horses that then might be subject to additional veterinary scrutiny. That transition, that first wave was right after our last domestic win in your in race, so around October 10th, last domestic win in your in. We performed that first round. We did a second round then on October 24th, which would be a day after pre-entries. Pre-entries were on October 23rd. As soon as we had that final list, we then again went through and reviewed all of those horses. At that point, we knew what the fields would begin to look like. And then on a third time, once entries went on Monday, we again reviewed medical records as a complete and thorough review. Included with that review on Monday was also all of the undercard races. So all horses had that review done on them. With regards to on-site for what we have here currently, obviously our out-of-competition program starts well early in June, late June, early July. And then our exams started in October. We reached out to a number of our jurisdictions around the United States to help us get some pre-exams done before those horses shipped, even here to Santa Anita. Once they're on grounds, these horses are seen at the stall, on the racetrack, nearly every day. Not necessarily an exam every day at the barn, but they're seen every day. One of our protocols that we've had for a few years are our trot-up exams. So every day when these horses go to the racetrack, they are observed by a pair of veterinarians with weight up on the racing surface. They're also doing a number of stall side exams, as we have done for a number of years. We've also included, with the great video capabilities here at Santa Anita, we have a tremendous amount of video footage that we're able to capture for these horses while they're on the track. So while a veterinarian is stationary, the video can certainly follow a horse around the racetrack, and we can capture important moments within that training if we have any questions regarding a specific horse. We've also developed a very in-depth team approach for our injury management plan with regards to race day, to make sure that we can provide the most efficient coverage to our horses and our riders should an injury occur on race day or any type of equine-related event that would require veterinary intervention. And that starts from the call to the receiving barn all the way until these horses have finished the race and walked off the racetrack and are either returning to their barn or going back to the test barn for testing, for post-race testing. So we have a very, very expansive veterinary footprint here, very appreciative for all of the collaboration. It takes a lot of effort. We have a number of veterinarians who have given up their time from their home jurisdictions to come here and help us, and we're very, very grateful for that and all the support that we have.
Thank you, Will. Dr. Dion Benson, First Racing's Chief Veterinary Officer, is tasked with a multitude of responsibilities directed towards equine safety and welfare. and I would like Dr. Benson to speak about the additional work that FIRST has undertaken in recent years, her collaboration with our teams, and the importance of having readily available diagnostic tools to aid horsemen in the health and well-being of their horses.
Thank you, Dora. Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to Santa Anita on behalf of FIRST Racing and the Stronach Group. At FIRST Racing, we certainly have, in the last 4 years, done a huge amount to place horse races or racing horses first in safety. In addition to having veterinarians watch training, which has never been done anywhere in the United States, every day these horses are observed on the track and checked. A number of them are checked in the barns. We've done thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of exams on horses in the last 4 years that would never have been done before 2019, basically. Additionally, we have invested heavily in technology. We have best-in-class diagnostic capability at the track, including the first in the world standing PET scan for horses, standing MRI, nuclear scan, as well as a fully equipped surgical suite for orthopedic surgeries. All of this is part of FIRST's commitment to ensuring horse safety. We continue to look towards technology and towards anything we can do to improve horse safety in the future, and we will continue to make those efforts as we go on.
Thank you, Dion. Breeders' Cup has been and continues to be a strong advocate for uniformity and transparency in racing, and we are strong supporters of both HISA and HIWU, and I'd now like to turn it over to their Chief Executive Officer, Lisa Lazarus.
Thank you so much. I'm really delighted to be here today, and welcome everyone. I just want to start by thanking Drew and Dora and the entire Breeders' Cup team, as well as the FIRST Racing team and all of the incredible work that Dr. Benson has done here, for everything that everyone has put into place to make sure that we have a safe Breeders' Cup. We, on behalf of HISA, we're very proud to be here this year. I have a number of phenomenal staff members in the audience here that I just want to reference. Dr. Jennifer Durenberger, Mark Guilfoyle, Anne McGovern, and Mandy Minger, who we all work very hard every day to try to make sure that we can deliver on the mission and the goals that Congress has asked us to implement. This is the first year that the Breeders' Cup will be under HISA's Anti-Doping and Medication Control Program, because as you know, that took effect about 5 months ago at the end of May 2023. There's no doubt that we still have a lot of work ahead of us to ensure racing is safe for our equine athletes, but for the first time ever, we now have national regulations and uniform standards in place to help us change the game forever and for the better. For example, our ADMC program's national uniform anti-doping medication rules mean that thoroughbreds across the country are tested for the same substances at the same levels in the same laboratories, and cases are adjudicated quickly, fairly, and uniformly. Ben, the executive director of HISA's ADMC enforcement agency, HIWU, will speak more to the specific numbers shortly. But just to give you all a sense of the scale, HIWU has tested more than 38,000 horses, and cases of suspected rule violations are being fully resolved in an average of 62 days from sample collection all the way through to resolution, which we believe is a very meaningful step forward in terms of the speed, the transparency, and the essentially uniformity of our enforcement program. The ADMC program's standardized rules help protect the integrity of the sport by ensuring that no horse or horseman has an unfair advantage over the competition, regardless of which jurisdiction they're coming from and how well connected they are. These integrity protocols are particularly important in an event like the World Championships, where the eyes of so many fans are upon us. The Breeders' Cup provides a wonderful opportunity for us to showcase the very best of our sport, and HISA is proud to do our part in assuring horse players and fans that racing is fair and that we put the welfare of the horse first. In addition to implementing the ADMC program at this year's Breeders' Cup, we've also been working with the Breeders' Cup veterinary team for the last several weeks to provide comprehensive veterinary records, as Dr. Farmer discussed and described, to help ensure that every horse competing this weekend is fit to race. As Drew referenced, the vast set of data that HISA now has access to has really been a game changer, and we believe it will be for the industry. We now have the potential to take that data and work with top-tier companies like Amazon Web Services and Palantir to analyze it in a way that can help us figure out what the data is actually telling us, where we should focus our resources in order to continue to try to do everything we all can to make horse racing as safe as possible. In addition to our focus on improving equine safety, HISA has also been working very hard to protect and implement safety regulations and programs for our jockeys. And last week we rolled out the sport's first ever national concussion protocol for jockeys. Here to talk about our focus on jockey well-being, including the work done in the lead up to the World Championships to ensure jockeys are safe here this weekend, we have HISA National Medical Director, Dr. Pete Hester, the first national medical director that we've had in our industry.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. It is an honor to be here with you. I know we're all rightfully focused on equine safety and wellness, but I'm grateful to have a few minutes to talk and share what the work that we're doing at HISA for the jockeys and the protocols in place for the Breeders' Cup this weekend to protect the jockeys and the riders and to treat them like the professional athletes that they truly are. I was brought in the HISA team as U.S. Thoroughbred Racing's first ever national medical director about a year ago. Since then, been working closely with the Jockeys Guild, the HISA team, and all tracks across the country to make racing safer for riders nationwide. One big area of focus has been on emergency preparedness. We've been working with tracks around the country to ensure that medical personnel and emergency responders are in place and trained to handle a variety of potential scenarios. For the Breeders' Cup this weekend, HISA, the Jockeys Guild, the Breeders' Cup, and First Racing have discussed safety policies and protocols to ensure that the team on the ground is prepared to react to any situation. The Santa Anita team has held emergency action drills already this week, with additional drills scheduled for today and a safety meeting tomorrow. I will visit with the Huntington Hospital staff this afternoon and also with the Arcadia USC hospital staff. I've been speaking with their emergency medical directors, their trauma surgeons, make sure we're all on the same page. In addition, there will be 2 advanced life-saving ambulances, ALS vehicles, on the track with 4 paramedics and 2 attending physicians. Breeders' Cup has also set up a first aid office on the site that is available to all the participants as well as the attendees. In addition to emergency preparedness, HISA is also focusing on ensuring proper prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of head injuries in jockeys. For the first time, tracks are now required to have a concussion protocol in place, such as the HISA National Concussion Protocol that we rolled out last week. We also require jockeys to have an up-to-date baseline concussion test on file, as well as an up-to-date fit-to-ride screening test on file. Additionally, we've begun working with tracks around the country to use a digital concussion management platform called HeadCheck to ensure we're keeping track of jockeys' concussion history, recovery, and as they move from track to track. Finally, I want to just briefly mention the work that we've been doing with the Jockeys Guild and other leaders across the sport to develop resources to support jockeys' mental wellness. We've done some polling of riders to see what kinds of resources would be most helpful to them, and are now working with our steering committee and advisory committee to find ways to help jockeys navigate their unique challenges. I also want to thank all leaders in this room today and across the country who have partnered with us, placing emphasis on jockey safety. I have great confidence that between the efforts of the Breeders' Cup, the Jockeys Guild, First Racing, and HISA, the jockeys this week will be in the best of hands. With that, Lisa, I'll pass it back to you.
So now I'm just going to pass on to HIWU's Executive Director, Ben Mosier, who can share more details around the components of the anti-doping program to date.
Thank you, Lisa. First, I'd like to thank all those joining me today on this safety briefing. HIWU is proud to work in partnership with each organization represented today, and I want to commend all of you on your efforts to protect the safety of our equine and human athletes this week. A lot has changed since I spoke to all of you a year ago. The HIWU team recently marked 5 months of enforcement of HISA's ADMC program. This past Monday, we published an update to the industry documenting our progress to this point. To quickly rehash some of those numbers, which Lisa mentioned earlier, since launch of May 22nd, more than 38,000 horses have been tested by HIWU certified sample collection personnel at over 50 racetracks and training centers in 18 states. The 6 accredited laboratories utilized by HIWU have reported the presence of more than 30 prohibited substances, including a dozen banned substances. The Highwoo Investigations Unit has overseen more than 100 barn searches nationwide. These searches have resulted in 10 possession cases for banned substances. Highwoo's anonymous whistleblower platforms have received more than 70 individual tips. And the Highwoo app, which includes a comprehensive database of all prohibited substances, has been downloaded nearly 2,000 times in 13 countries and also contains more than 40 educational resources, including fact sheets and videos. This week, we're taking on our most high-profile assignment to date, administering the ADMC program for the Breeders' Cup. We've been working with the Breeders' Cup, the CHRB, and First Racing, all of whom have been great partners, and we appreciate their collaboration. This week, we have 6 staff investigators on the ground, whose primary focus is to work with the Breeders' Cup investigations team on the coordination and collection of medical syringes as evidence for potential testing. The Breeders' Cup implemented 24/7 security on all horses on Tuesday at 11 a.m., and after that time, all syringes used for treatment will be collected and stored by the Highwoo team. All sample collection personnel working in the test barn and receiving barn this week have been trained and certified by Highwoo and have been using our paperless collection system since the implementation of the ADMC program in May. I'd like to thank the CHRB and First Racing for their continued support and collaboration through the voluntary agreement, which allows for the staff continuity on the ground in the state of California. All samples collected this week, including post-race, TCO2, and out of competition, will be sent to the UC Davis Maddie Laboratory for analysis. 226 out of competition tests have been conducted on potential Breeders' Cup qualifying horses through Monday, October 30th. That started back in June, as Dr. Farmer mentioned. 174 of those samples are from domestic jurisdictions, including California, Florida, Kentucky, New Jersey, Maryland, and New York. The remaining 52 samples were completed in cooperation with international anti-doping authorities to coordinate sample collections in Japan, France, England, Ireland, and Canada. I'd especially like to thank Dr. Will Farmer with the Breeders' Cup, who worked continuously with our operations team to help coordinate and track this extensive out-of-competition testing plan. Additionally, as is customary for the Breeders' Cup testing program in previous years, all horses were out of competition tested upon their arrival to Santa Anita Park. Those tests were all completed yesterday morning, and all 171 samples are currently in process at the UC Davis Maddie Laboratory. The results for horses racing on Friday will be received by end of day Thursday for those out of competition samples. The results for racing on Saturday will be received by end of day Friday. And then there is a plan in place to ensure these results are shared with the appropriate Breeders' Cup personnel in the occurrence that a horse needs to be scratched per the Breeders' Cup entry conditions. Finally, on race day, all horses will be subject to TCO2 testing prior to racing. And for post-race testing, we will be selecting the top 4 finishers plus 1 special for every race. Test selection will be intelligence-based, and both Highwoo and the stewards will contribute to test selection. Results for Friday's races will be reported by the end of day Monday, and results for Saturday's races will be reported by the end of day Tuesday. And I'll pass it back to Lisa.
I think we're now back to.
At this point, Claire's going to come up and